Hello everyone, this is the Vloggerio. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a player using object-oriented way. Just like previous space, once you enter your name in the game, you hit the play button and the program will create a player for you. And if you don't hit the play button, there will be no player. This is what we're gonna do now. Let's go. We use object-oriented programming to mimic the real world and make things easier in program. Of course, a lot cleaner, easier, and faster. That is why we do this. For example, we say we have a creature object, and this creature object has some attributes and methods. These are called attributes because they are variables that any creature has. And these are some methods that any creature could have. So think of creature as a parent object of all child creatures in the world, like all the animals, maybe humans. They are all somehow a kind of creature and they share something. All of those things that are shared are in the parent object, just like that. And when it comes to the child classes or child objects, notice object and classes are so much similar together. Object and classes are basically the same thing. Now, child objects or child classes, they get anything that their parent has because they are also a creature. They get everything they have, and they can have some more as well. So it means that they inherit something from the parent class. This is inheritance, yeah, because it's getting these because this human guy is inheriting these from the parent class, and then it can also talk. So that is why he's a human. Now, on the other side, the cat, as you can see, the cat is also inheriting everything that a creature has, but it also has another method or attribute. It can scratch things. Maybe that's something they do. And because it's a method, it should be right like this. I made a mistake here, and that's this open parenthesis, close parenthesis in the end of scratch. That makes it a method. So all the objects in the world has some attribute and some methods. Methods are the actions, are the functionalities, and attributes are the known things that the creature has, maybe number of legs, maybe the color of eye, things like that. Go on and on. I'm gonna do the same thing in our code instead of the old way we were doing it. So I'm gonna open our last project up, which was episode number 7, and I'm gonna continue from there. If you're watching this, if you're new to my YouTube channel, you will notice that this is not episode. Let me show you this. This is my YouTube. This is not episode. This is not from episode 8. This is from episode maybe 3 or 4. I will put the link down below because the episode number 7, the last episodes are gonna have a remaster version as well. That is why instead of this episode number 8, I'm gonna have a new link down below as well. Alright, here, instead of what we already have here, because there are some part of code in the draw function, we have a bunch of code in key press and key release. Instead of those, I'm gonna quickly write an object. How we do that? We create a new variable, and we call the variable, we give it a name. I'm gonna say it's a player. And why I start with uppercase, because it's gonna be a object creator. Whenever I call this function, it is going to create an object, one of these things, maybe one of these things is gonna create this and give me that, and it's gonna return this result. It is called a constructor, the player object constructor, and this player is going to be a function because it's going to return something in the end. It's going to return an object, and because it's going to be an object, so whenever I do this, the first character is uppercase. It somehow means that this function is actually an object constructor, not a normal function. Inside here, I can now give it some attributes. How I give it attributes? I should say this. Whenever I say this, it means that, okay, this player has the attribute or the method. I'm gonna give it the first attribute, this dot. This is actually an object itself in JavaScript, so don't care about that right now. Do not ever forget the this dot whenever you're creating an object. I should say this dot. What should I have first? Maybe the name is equal to nothing now. Nothing now. Maybe, yeah. I'm gonna give it exactly nothing, and then I'm gonna say this dot x, which is equal to 0. This dot y is equal to 0 as well. What else do we have here for our player? No other thing. That is so easy. That was so easy. So whenever I'm gonna create the player constructor, as you can see, if I don't use this dot, the color of player changes. It means that this is not an object. But when I put the this dot over here, the color change means it mimics the form of an object. In the end, we should return this as well. And whenever I'm gonna create an object, I should not forget it. I'm gonna give it an x and y, maybe a name, before I create the object. So whenever I create the object, I can say, okay, the name is actually this name. So I give it some parameters, and I use that parameters to create the object. And this x is equal to the x from the parameter, and this dot y is going to be equal to the parameter y. And what else do we have? One of the most important thing in our game, this dot draw, which is going to be this dot draw, which is going to be responsible for drawing things on the screen. How that works? This dot draw is not an attribute. This is a functionality. This is an action. So this dot draw is going to be equal to a function, just like that. So I have 3 attributes and 1 functionality for a player object, just like what we had here. Maybe 3 attributes and 3 functionalities for our creature class. That's the same thing. So what do I have in the this.draw? I'm gonna bring everything here. I already wrote this for you. So I translate, then I fill. Okay, I'm gonna bring everything. Also, everything just like that. We're gonna bring them over here into the this.draw function. I have noticed that there is something else that we have, which is a speed x and a speed y. I'm gonna give that as well. I'm gonna say, okay, as well as these two, we have an speed x and a speed y as well, which are not going to come from the parameter right now. They are going to be maybe 5 and 5. It's gonna be simple. And if you notice, this is called an scope. Alright, this dot is always works under the player. So outside the player object or player constructor, I cannot say this dot x. Okay, this dot x. I cannot do that. This will throw me an error. That is why whenever I'm gonna use this dot x, not the x, or not the global variable x, I should say new vertex on this.x. Alright, just like that. This.x, 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 and this.y, 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 just like that. This dot y, this dot x, this dot speed y, this dot speed x. And I don't need this. Alright, fairly enough. What else do we miss here is, of course, whenever we press a key, but I don't want to change it right now. And I want the speed to be 0, 0. Yeah, it should be like that. So the object is just like that. We no longer need these guys over here. So right now everything we had is under a player object constructor. Now we should use this constructor to create an object, to actually create it. How do I do that? I'm gonna define a global variable. I'm gonna call var player number 1, which is nothing by default. And in the setup, after I do everything that is necessary, I'm gonna say player number 1 is equal to, so I'm gonna fill this variable up with the result of my object constructor, which is in the end, which is going to return this. You will see how it looks. So the player number 1 is gonna be new. No need to say new. Player. I'm gonna give it an x and y because this is a new object. Of course it works, but because it is an object now, we should say new, because we're going to create a new player with these parameters, with these parameters that we give it. So the first parameter is gonna be 0, maybe in the y. Oh, the first parameter is name, so it's gonna be the Vlagario. The second is the x, which is 0, and maybe 50. What this line of code does is it basically creates a new object from the player object constructor, and it stores the result of that into my player number 1. And now from the player number 1 I can access to its information. I can say player number 1.x or player number 1.speed x, just like that. It's gonna be simple. In the future I will talk more about these kind of objects, but right now it's enough for now. So I basically create the player number 1, and whenever I draw something, I'm gonna say, because if I run the project right now, we will see nothing on the screen because we never called the draw function of our player number 1. We should call it. Where do I call it? In the draw. Whenever the draw is happening, it's gonna say player number 1.draw. Just like that. And because we're not sure if the draw function is happening faster than setup, or later than that, which one is first? Of course, setup will always happen in the first place. That's the thing you should keep in mind. So I'm not going to check if the player number 1 exists or not right now. I'm just gonna say player number 1 draw the player number 1, just like that. And whenever I press keys, I'm no longer going to change the global variable speed y. I'm gonna say player, let the computer help me, player number 1 dot speed y, or and player number 1 speed y, speed x, speed x. Same thing happens for the key release. This, just like that, because speed x is an attribute of our player number 1 over here. And what is player number 1? Player number 1 is being filled up by the result of this constructor, which was an object. So this object constructor created an object, returned the result. We took it and stored it into the player number 1, and we are now using the attributes of that like this, and one of its methods or functionalities in our draw function. I'm gonna save and test the program right now. I'm gonna say not server.js. Let's go ahead and check that. Localhost 2000. Yeah, it's working. It's actually working. But notice that the camera is not following the player. I should change something else as well. What should I change? That is this translate. We don't have x anymore. We have des.x and we have des.y. I'm gonna stop and start the server again. I'm gonna refresh again, and it works just like before. But now we have multiple players. We can have multiple players. We have a player using our object. And what if we want another player? Just like that, we can say war player number 2, and then here I can create another player which is number 2, maybe in another position, 150, and then whenever I draw the player number 2 as well, and whenever I press the key, I don't care about player number 2 right now. I'm gonna start the server, I'm gonna refresh. Just like that, we have another player as well. Notice there is a problem because we have two maps in the background, not map, maybe two backgrounds. That's not a part of the, that doesn't have anything to do with the player function, which is this. I wanna take this out. Maybe take these two out. This is better. I'm gonna go up here in the draw function. After I draw the player number 1, or better, on top of everything, I'm gonna say player number 1.x, player number 1.y, because this is going to be our camera position somehow. So I should use player number 1 x and y because I'm going to draw everything according to the position of the player number 1. And then I'm gonna fill the screen. Then I'm gonna create a rectangle, maybe 800. No, it was good. And then I'm gonna draw the two players. Fresh. I'm gonna open this. Fresh. Yeah, just like that. And we can have as much as player as we want without copy and pasting any line of code, any more line of code. Just like that, we can have multiple of these. But in the next episode, I'm going to show you a better solution for having multiple players using arrays, first of all, and then we're gonna I'm gonna give this player object more functionalities like rotating toward the mouse, which is very important for the future use. Thank you very much for watching my video. Please consider subscribing if you really enjoyed it. Goodbye.